Welcome to today's webinar when we're going to focus on the importance of alternative dispute resolution and why dealers should be accredited to the TMO's Vehicle Sales Code. So in today's competitive automotive market, consumer trust is everything. Vehicle sales come with significant financial and emotional investment, and when disputes arise, how they're handled can make or break a dealership's reputation. The Motor Ombudsman's Vehicle Sales Code provides dealers with a clear framework for best practices, ensuring transparency, professionalism and consumer confidence. So I'd like to welcome you to my guest today, which is John Collinswood. So he's the CEO of Warranty Solutions Group. Welcome, John.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we've got Danny from the TMO, who is a new business manager. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So we'd like to start off with a series of questions, really. And Danny, we're going to mainly focus you on these, obviously being from the TMO. So if I can start off, why is it important for dealers to be accredited to the TMO's vehicle sales?
For me, there are three main reasons, three categories, if you like. Firstly, commercially speaking, I think it's a sensible thing to do, given that we know, because we survey them, consumers feel more confident if they're dealing with a business that's accredited to us. So commercially, it's a sensible approach, meaning that you'll be, as accredited business, you'll be listed with a profile on our website. Now, we get a tremendous number of hits on a monthly basis on our website of consumers searching for a garage to buy a car from. The typical ratio of customers that feel more confident is 85% typically, or around that number. Now, that's significant.
A huge amount.
Yeah, and that's the first reason I would say. And coming along with accreditation, a business is able to use our logo, which is backed by CTSI trading standards, which gives them that credibility. So they can use that in their socials, on their website and so on, and really promote the fact that they're an accredited business, and it's therefore going to deliver them leads, inquiries. So why wouldn't you from a commercial perspective? Operationally, the code of practice has been developed in conjunction with the motor industry. It's been around a long time, it's well respected, and as I mentioned, it's backed by trading standards. So it's something which just to sort of give an overview of what it looks like, and it's accessible for people online if they're unsure. It's essentially 9 categories which stem from advertising right through to after sales support. They're all common sense categories within any business. So it'll be things like how you present a vehicle for sale, things like making sure you offer a test drive and so on, right through to the provision of warranty products and so on, and complaints handling. So, but if you were to spend a little bit of time looking at it, you'd probably quickly realise that for my business, if you like, if you're a garage owner, for my business, that all makes sense. It should do. I'd be surprised if it was another view that you had. But frankly, when I say operationally, that code of practice can be interwoven into your sales process, your training, your induction of new staff and so on. So from the get-go, if you're accredited to the sales code, you're going to be doing the right things. There's a far less likelihood then that you're going to end up with disputes because you would have done the right things all the way through. Now, obviously, mistakes get made. But frankly, that's what I mean by operationally. Also, just as an addition to that, being accredited means you get access to our webinars, our monthly updates, and it's a great opportunity to be kept up to date with legislation changes in that. And just sort of, with the webinars, for example, they're full of practical learnings where you have real life case studies where you can, be asked, what would you do in this situation? So they're real practical things that can help you operationally. And then finally is professionally. So given that any trader it's mandatory for them to signpost if they can't resolve a dispute, to signpost an ADR provision and to give the name and website details to that customer and also they don't have to participate, but they're supposed to notify whether they are willing to carry out that process. So why not use the Ombudsman for the sector? Now, our ADR provision is in place. There's a number of steps that each case goes through, and it includes the right to appeal, which I think is very important. Okay, so if you disagree with our decision, then you can provide new evidence and a reason for that, and it will be looked at again before it comes to a final decision. So I'd say that's my answer.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a minefield out there, isn't it? And I think you guys just simplify everything really, but really create that consumer confidence as well. Certainly that brand, the Motor Ombudsman, just gives it that real confidence to the consumer.
Absolutely.
What are the most common disputes that you see?
The most common disputes, I think, broadly, if we're talking about sales here, because we've got codes of practice for new cars and for service and repair and for warranty provision as well. But for sales, they account for typically around 40% of the overall disputes that we receive. Okay, so just looking at it from a sort of an overview, that's significant, and it tends to follow that same sort of proportion year on year. The types of disputes, the highest proportion I'd say would be to do with the engine area of the vehicle. Okay, so that would be things like problems with turbos, spark plugs, timing belts snapping, all the typical things, engine mounts, anything you can think of. They tend to be the highest sort of number in terms, and that accounts for around 60% of the cases that we see, or disputes we get levelled at us, and then followed up by around 20% customer service. So when we talk about customer service, it can mean a number of things. It can be things simply such that a customer didn't receive a new MOT that they were promised, or the service history has gaps in it which it wasn't described to them when they were buying the car. Issues on delivery, those types of things are all fairly prominent. But one of the ones that stands out for me, and you can relate back to why you would want to be accredited to the code, is that often a dispute would be based around the fact that the deposit wasn't refundable, and it was not. You were misinformed of that. Now that seems, something that's easy to fix if you make sure that all of your staff are able to.
You're aware.
Describe. Is it refundable? If it's not, what are the T's and C's? So it's just one example.
John, just from your point of view, from warranty point of view, would you say disputes are similar to that from a kind of an engine perspective, really, where we see the most of it?
As far as the repairs are concerned now, what we're seeing is that the incident rate is reducing, which is good in some respects, and that's why I think you find warranty companies are covering more and more items now because they're able to. But the cost of the individual claim is growing quite rapidly for a number of reasons. One is obviously for the labour rates, and because obviously there's a shortage of engineers effectively, and the parts are not getting any cheaper. Disputes with dealers can be, the customers do sometimes have an unrealistic expectation. We have had people phone us because they've got a puncture, which is rather bizarre. So I think sometimes it's a question of trying to get people to understand exactly what our product covers. We phone every customer to make sure after the event, because they've got the excitement of buying the vehicle, to make sure that they know what the product is and what's covered, and that dramatically reduces our claims and disputes effectively. One of them can be that the people go ahead and have work done without consulting us first of all, which with all warranty companies that will lead to a rejection. And sometimes there is an unrealistic expectation that service items would be covered by this. I mean, a warranty is not a service contract, that's a totally different thing. So that's the sort of things that we get. Interesting,
thanks John. It's back to you, Danny. What trends are you seeing regarding claims?
I'd say the most significant one, if you like, it is a trend over the last 2 years. If you go back to 2022, so we would have received in its entirety around just over 100,000 consumer inquiries into our operation. And from that, we would have administered or managed around 6,400 cases, going through adjudication. So that was back in 2022. If you then just jump forward to 2024, the consumer contacts is more than doubled. It's 219,000.
Wow.
And cases administered would be around 12,000. I think it's 12,900 or around that figure. So virtually doubling in that time frame. That I would say the most significant sort of trend, if you like. However, there's others as well. You know, there would be in terms of the number of cases, specifically regarding the sales code. Back in 2022, around 7,000. That's risen to 16,000 cases opened in 2024, which is again quite a significant number.
Large volume, yeah.
And then if you then go further, there's other trends which maybe just contradict slightly what you said a moment ago, John, where the preferred remedy or the sort of what we ask a consumer when they submit a dispute. One of the questions they're asked is, you know, what would be put a financial amount against the preferred remedy, or and that's gone down from over £6,000 to just over £4,000. So the number of disputes submitted has very much increased, but the amount is smaller. Now that could mean a lot of things, but that's a significant change, I'd say, as well.
Come on, Danny, don't scare us all, but what's the largest claim you've ever seen over the past 12 months?
Well, on the books, if you like, you know, we have all kinds of businesses, you know, so very number of thousand businesses on board who are accredited, and they'll be in all different shapes and sizes. So if the dealer is supplying, you know, supercars, luxury supercars, that type of thing, then by definition the claims will be typically more.
Yes.
I know in 2024 there was one for £240,000.
Wow.
And another around 170,000. So, you know, but I would say that within the makeup of those disputes, the claims, if you like, they would still follow a similar method, if you like. I know that one of them, for example, was that when the vehicle was delivered, it had a problem, and you know, that turned into that consumer then getting that vehicle independently assessed, and they came up with a list of problems, and then they wanted to fully reject the car, just like they would if it was £10,000. It's the same theory.
Which comes back to preparation of vehicle, really.
Entirely.
Making sure that's correct in the first place.
Yeah, which again sort of comes back to my point about, you know, operationally it's the right thing to do. I'm sure most businesses out there would say, yeah, we do this each and every time. But typically if you look at the figures and the number of disputes that are, you know, inquiries coming to us, they can't be. Not everybody is. So, you know, or mistakes happen, of course, but the best thing to do is just try to stay on track and try to set your stall out as you would, you know, you'd want to if you're on the other side of the desk. You know, you want the right things to be done in preparation for your sale. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And moving on to the last question, I'm going to ask you both this, but Danny, we'll start with you. So, what tips can you offer dealers when handling customer complaints?
Right. Well, I would start from the main point here, and that would be that I interact with a lot of dealers of all sizes, if you like, and it is quite shocking to me that they often don't have a complaints policy in place of any description. So first and foremost, have a robust complaints policy. And when I say, or complaints process, whatever you'd like to call it, when I say have one, have effectively two. You need a complaints policy to be available to customers upon request, something you can actually print off and give to them to say, this is what we'll do if there's a problem. It's not something that should be shied away from. It's something that should be promoted. And within the code, again, it is something that's expected of you at the point of handover. And it is a wise thing to do when you weigh things up. The second part of that and use, incidentally, the code of practice to form your policy. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to include, steps for a customer, timeframes, and so on. So typically you'd have 8 weeks to resolve a dispute, and that's what we typically see. But there's any amount of information, and we can give guidance, incidentally, if a business joins us on how to create a complaints policy. The other side of it is the internal complaints procedure, which often is a little bit overlooked. There are two, from my mind: what the customer sees and will, how they'll their journey through that complaint, and then how the business functions and operates, and what the roles and responsibilities are. Because one sort of anecdotal thing, we often find that consumers come to us with a dispute, and we later find that the business wasn't aware of it. And I often think to myself, well, how can that be? All right, occasionally that could happen, but mostly if there's somebody who's got a problem, if it's recorded correctly, if it's logged, if it's, the right people are accountable for that issue, then they should be aware of it. So without doubt, have a policy, make sure there's sort of two elements to it, and make sure everything is logged and recorded is my advice at a very high level.
John, anything to add to that? Any tips?
I think we need to understand that when the customer is going to collect the car, all they want to do is to get into that driving seat and drive the car down the road. So they're also trying to work out where everything is at the same time. They're not really listening to what's being said. And this is why on the warranty side, we will phone them a week, 2 weeks after they bought the car, and then we will go with them, because hopefully the excitement has calmed down a little bit and they're actually listening. We also think it's very difficult, such as with finance agreements, it can take an hour, 2 hours to explain what a finance agreement is, because that's what they have to do. Yeah. Most of which the customers don't understand in general speak. So I think it is communication. So and people are not listening, and I think sometimes it's useful. I think it'd be useful for the dealers if they've got key terms and that to maybe write to the customers after the sale and just explain these are our key terms. And as you say about a complaints procedure, I think that would be fantastic to let them know that. But the most important thing is to take them seriously very, very quickly. What happens, as I think in your example that you gave just now, it can be one problem and then it can go into a dealer or a repair shop and they're looking for work. So what starts out as one individual problem, actually, well, there's 10 different problems, but there's not actually 10 different problems. It's just the service centre has decided to make as much money as possible from the customer and then said, well, ideally you need to do all this. Well, you don't actually need to do all that. And that creates a great deal of problems. So if you don't jump on it quickly, it escalates. We've got customer care champions that if anybody is unhappy with their claim situation, they will step in and they will take over the case and they will speak to the customer for as long as it's necessary to get the points across. And of course, we are members of the Ombudsman as well, so that they have someone else in which to go to.
I think, like you say, really nipping it in the bud. If there's an issue, nip it in the bud, deal with the problem.
Take it seriously.
Take it seriously.
Before it escalates. And it is a motive issue because when you take someone's car away, you're taking away their freedom effectively. So if you don't jump on it very quickly, then it will escalate. So you're making your own problem. So that's really the key. But it's getting the communication across with the customer, and it's not necessarily saying it at the time of purchase, because as I just to reiterate, they're interested in getting in that car and driving it down the road. They're not interested in what you're saying about anything. So, but my advice would be for dealerships to advise the customers after the sale that these are our terms and conditions. Or this is the key points that you need to know. But that's just my opinion. And also linking in with the TMO.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, you can see really where obviously the Motor Ombudsman can come in and step in and really help with helping with those disputes. Yeah,
I mean, listen, that's what we do each and every day. We've gone from, in 2022, 38 people in the business to 62. It'll be in a very short time. So that's us gearing up, because the market and the climate right now means that there are a lot of consumer people. Some of that it would be to do with the fact that there are more used cars being sold. I think 7.6 million in 2024, and as opposed to 6.9 in 2022. So there's more cars. And also, you know, cost of living crisis, adding pressure to family sort of incomes and so on. So people are more likely to come to us with a dispute. And that's happening because, of course, ADR is a free of charge service for consumers and always will be. And it's only a limited fee, a very small fee, really, when you consider it for the business to pay if they have to go through a full case, which I mentioned is also it includes the right to appeal. So yeah, we're there. We recommend obviously people joining, and if people are interested and they want to know what's within the code and sort of challenge me on my description of it, and then they can find it. And they can read through it themselves. As used car operators, I'm sure they'd see very quickly that it makes a lot of sense.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully you found that webinar interesting and useful. Certainly some really good points raised there. So thank you to both my guests. Thank you for joining us. That brings us to a close.